Sunrise looked fake that morning, casting glitter over the sooty factory floor like a tacky filter. It was early spring, the air thin with cold and the faint acidic bite of machinery. I zipped my cheap jacket higher, felt the rustle of my resignation letter folded like some fragile origami in my chest pocket. 2 years on this assembly line. Robot arms mounted on rails hissed overhead. The floor beneath had a skin of oil, light green in places, slippery and treacherous after a 12-hour shift. Concrete walls windowless, painted a bureaucratic blue that never grew warm. Sweat, sour coffee, the slap of rubber soles, the endless thump of boxes moving down the line. These things rooted themselves in my bones, indistinguishable from my own heartbeat. I was at the exit, somewhere between numb and bracing, when I saw Min Jun with 3 others hunched by the door. I had dreaded this, knew he'd say something if he saw the envelope in my hand. "You're finally giving up, huh?" he said, voice swollen with the false gentleness used with drunks and fools. They assessed me, faces shiny under the cold strip lights. "We'll see," I said, willing my tone to stay even. He tapped the folded paper. "Still that science dream? Maybe write a letter to the president while you're at it." They jeered, and in the slapstick dawn it strung, not so much their doubt by now expected, but something in the way their expressions fused curiosity and amusement, like they couldn't believe I still cared. The air thinned, the ground seemed to tilt. I kept my head down, eyes biting from fluorescent glare and sharp humiliation. Beyond these walls the city waited. I slid out the service door, steered past dumpsters and acrid trash, and walked into my uncertain freedom. Home was a one-room rooftop with a slanted window and a fridge too small for more than 3 meals. The ceiling, crisscrossed with fat, ugly cracks, lurked directly above my mattress. I watched the city wash itself in neon and traffic. Dawn bled to day, and traffic snaked through the streets below, always moving, always pulsing with a frantic sort of hunger. My mother called within the hour. Her voice, gentle as a prayer, did nothing to smooth my nerves. "Are you coming for breakfast?" I could hear the lilt of concern and the metallic clank of dishes in her kitchen. "I'm tired, Oma," I said, not explaining. I pictured the corner of her table, the chair she piled with bags of onions, her fading apron. "I should sleep." She pressed as if the world would end if she left me alone too long, but the subject of my resignation, of what came next, remained invisible, a wall between us. I wondered if she hoped it would simply fade away if we never ripped it open. After the call, I sat on the mattress in silence. Papers and textbooks surrounded me, dog-eared pages of biochemistry, code printouts with scribbled corrections, articles downloaded, stolen hours stitched between shifts. The factory was gone, but I had nothing to fill the vacuum but ambition and a bitterness shaped like an open wound. Even so, I started again. I sent my applications. I worked on datasets with the free cloud time I could scrounge. My proposals went unread, my messages unopened. Soul moved on, uncaring, while I stared into monitor light until my eyes ached. Neighbors asked if I was job hunting, always with that hungry, half-smiling curiosity people reserve for distant train wrecks. My uncle dropped by one afternoon, bringing rice cakes, not meeting my gaze, his bland encouragement curling with suspicion. "You're still at that science hobby." No one said it directly, but their meaning was clear. Dreams happen to people with rich parents, glossy diplomas, the right accent and nose for schmoozing. Not for me, the dropout from a trade school, who learned about enzymes on YouTube and paid bills by lifting boxes. I existed in a liminal suspension, anger simmering below serenity, an engine that never switched off. Some days I felt absurd, like I was impersonating a scientist speaking 2 languages at once. One of molecules and probability, another of spreadsheets and ramen packets. Months passed. One summer night, as bugs battered the thin window glass, I got an email. An invitation for an interview at a small private lab on the edge of Gangnam. Unfunded, the message implied, desperate I suspected. My resume, crudely patched together, must have filled their need for someone cheap yet fierce. The lab was in a squat building beside a dentist's office, far from the glass towers I'd always eyed. Still, the manager, Dr. Lim, seemed startled that I could describe neural networks and DNA splicing with clarity. She tested me rapid-fire in Korean and English, her brow bouncing between disbelief and delight. She looked at my hands, rough from factory work, but her words were sharp and decisive. "We're hiring for ideas, not uniforms," she said, as if she'd sensed what I feared. 3 years, I learned to live with the constant, subtle tension, the way colleagues eyed me like a bug beneath a lens, the way even friendly faces sometimes slipped, betrayed a flicker of skepticism. Yet in the silence of the wet lab's far corner, pipette trembling between my fingers, I found a kind of sanctuary. Late nights with data, my feet aching, my stomach hollow. Mornings scribbling on whiteboards, chasing a thread of intuition that no one else could see. We worked on aging, an algorithm to model senescence, to reprogram human cells into a state of renewed vigor. It was laughable, my uncle said when he heard. My mother, more tactful, simply worried aloud about my lost years. Don't you want a family, a real job? Their words lived in my chest. I let the anger burn within reason. But slowly, a deep serenity took root, a faith in my ability to endure above the noise, above their smirks. The research went slowly, sputtered, revived under grant money and threats of layoffs. We had setbacks, mistakes. But sometimes, at 3 in the morning, I looked at the first hints of our results, a cluster of rejuvenated mouse cells glowing on the monitor, refusing to die when they should have. My hand trembled. Maybe I could build a different kind of life. Dr. Lim became a friend. She demanded everything, but sometimes she would catch me staring, not at screens but at empty air. They won't believe you, she advised, until you show them something impossible. It happened one pale October. We got attention from a government institute, an open call for breakthroughs, a contest with corporate sponsors and media. The past years compressed into a train wreck of sprints and all-nighters. Our work, the AI-augmented cell reprogramming model, had moved from mouse cells to human skin samples. In a borrowed boardroom before an audience that included industry heads, journalists, and half the city's skeptical visionaries, I took the stage. News crews buzzed. My body vibrated between rage at every voice that ever doubted and serenity. The focused peace that comes from realizing there's nothing left to lose. I talked. I showed the data, cells young and old, coaxed from wrinkles into smoothness, probabilities graphed, algorithms explained in as little jargon as possible. I could feel the tension. Cynicism thickened the air. A man in a grey suit, arms folded, smirked and asked if our evidence was artificially pretty. I replied, we brought something more conclusive. At a small table beside the podium, we set up a microscope wired to a large TV. Dr. Lim prepared a slide, skin cells donated from volunteers, half treated with our protocol, half not. The protocol worked. Cells glowed blue if they had entered a youthful state. The crowd gathered. No computer simulations now, just what the lens revealed. I heard gasps. Phones rose to record. The screen lit up, young cells shining blue right next to the dull, unchanged ones. They couldn't ignore it. Some looked for a trick, a technical glitch. But our paperwork, the third-party observers, the sample donors, all were accounted for. For one brief, impossible moment, I saw the wall shatter, the space between the possibility and their belief collapsing. I wanted to laugh, not cruelly but out of relief. For years, their reactions had been closed circuits of skepticism and polite resignation. Now their faces were wide open. Afterward, emails poured in. Investors, press, invitations to conferences. The project became public with patents and joint ventures. My photo, a washed-out blur over a microscope, found its way into the science pages of newspapers my mother read. My family, until then, had remained distant. They'd called rarely, careful not to mention the project. But now my mother sent me clipped articles with linings of pride and worry, her way of apologizing for all the times she'd suggested I give up. The first time I went home after our work was published, it was a Sunday. I boarded the bus at Marpo, city receding behind streaming windows, and rode north into the hillside neighborhoods where the air lost its sharpness, where clothes dried on lines between brick homes. My uncle stepped out to meet me, wiping his hands on his pants as if he'd been gardening, which I suspected was a pretext. He gestured wordlessly for me to follow. Inside, the house smelled of garlic and hot metal. My mother stood bent over the stove, her hair cropped shorter than I remembered. She looked up, eyes uncertain, nervous. My sister, down from university, flitted in the doorway with her phone out, pretending disinterest. I set my backpack down and bowed my head the way I'd done every Sunday as a child. "Did you eat?" my mother asked. I nodded, but she ladled rice anyway. We sat in awkward silence, the air heavy with small questions they didn't know how to voice. My uncle, always direct, broke first. "So, the science thing, it's bigger than we thought, eh?" I held my bowl. It took a long time, but yes. He grunted, unable to square this new reality with years of jokes. I saw the shame tug at his mouth. My mother touched my arm, gentle, hesitant. My sister cleared her throat. "I saw you online, people are talking, they're saying your team." I cut her off, it wasn't just me. But I worked harder than I thought I could. The table creaked as my mother poured me tea, her eyes shimmered in the kitchen light, the worry lines softening just a little. "I'm glad you didn't listen to us," she said quietly. For a moment, anger and serenity existed together in my chest, a memory of old wounds and a sudden peacefulness, not because anything was truly fixed, family hurt lingers, but because I saw them trying in ways they never could before. I left before dark, promising to return for dinner next month. Outside, the neighborhood was still, trees curling over stone walls, streetlights flickering in the wind. Kids played soccer in a narrow lot once meant for deliveries. Far above, the city sparkled, all the anger, all the tiredness, it loosened its grip just a little. Walking back toward the bus, I saw Min Jun from the factory standing in the shade of a corner shop, smoking alone. He watched me uncertain, his face twitching with something unsayable. He half nodded, a gesture both apology and awe. For once he didn't mock, didn't taunt, just stared. We locked eyes and I remembered all the mornings, all the laughter at my expense. But my heart was something different now, steadier, no longer shaped by their limits. I nodded back, enough words had already been spoken. I passed him, left him behind in the cooling dusk. The city waited for me, alive with neon and promise, and I walked into it, free at last to bear witness to my own forgiveness.